Imagine this. You've just crossed the finish line of a race you've been running for years, maybe even your whole life. The applause is deafening. The certificates are framed. The bank account is heavier. Your name echoes in rooms you never thought you'd enter. Everything you believed would make you happy is finally yours. Yet, as you sit alone in your quiet apartment that night, staring at the city lights outside your window, a hollow ache blooms in your chest. The success you chased so relentlessly now feels strangely empty. You told yourself for years, once I get there, then I'll feel fulfilled. But now that you're there, the celebration feels mechanical, the smiles rehearsed. The very goals that once ignited your mornings now feel like distant echoes, devoid of life. You wonder, with a silent, almost embarrassing dread, is this all there is? How can it be that after achieving so much, you feel so little? This is the paradox, the unsettling contradiction that no one warns you about. The very summit you've labored to reach often reveals itself as barren, cold, and lifeless. Success, long glorified as the ultimate pursuit, becomes an empty monument to years of sacrifice. Friends might envy your achievements. Family might praise your dedication. But beneath their admiration lies your private existential crisis, one you dare not voice. Why does success feel like failure? You might start to retrace your steps in your mind, wondering if you made the wrong choices, pursued the wrong dreams, or if something is fundamentally broken within you. But what if it's not your choices that are broken? What if it's the very idea of success itself? Carl Jung, one of the most profound explorers of the human psyche, quietly warned about this very condition, the hollowness that descends after achieving worldly triumphs. He suggested that when success is divorced from a deeper process of individuation, the journey of becoming your true self-it leads not to fulfillment, but to alienation. Jung knew what modern society refuses to acknowledge. Achievement without inner integration is a kind of spiritual amputation. But why is this such a universal experience? Why do so many high achievers, from CEOs to artists, athletes to scholars, confess to feeling this emptiness once they've made it? Why is the human heart so insatiable that no title, possession, or accolade can seem to quench its longing? Could it be that what we call success is, in fact, a mirage, something that appears vivid and promising from a distance, but vanishes upon arrival? And if that's true, what does that say about the way we build our lives, structure our ambitions, and define our very identities? You might be asking yourself, if success doesn't lead to fulfillment, then what does? If everything I've been taught to pursue ultimately leaves me feeling detached from myself, then how do I find something real, something lasting? The knowing emptiness after success is not merely an individual problem. It is a profound human dilemma, one that has haunted thinkers, mystics, and psychologists for centuries. From Nietzsche's warning about the last man, content with shallow pleasures, but devoid of meaning, to Viktor Frankl's insistence that life's primary drive is not success, but purpose. History is littered with testimonies that echo your silent question. But still, here you are, successful, yet strangely unfulfilled. So, what are you missing? Carl Jung might say you are suffering, not because you failed, but precisely because you succeeded in fulfilling an idea of success that was never truly yours to begin with. The real question isn't, why do I feel empty after success? The real question is, what was I hoping success would give me that I haven't yet found? What if this feeling of hollowness is not a failure, but an invitation, an initiation into a deeper, more authentic version of yourself that transcends the simplistic notion of external success? But before we can answer that, we must first descend into the roots of this hidden problem, the psychological, philosophical, and societal forces that set this painful trap in the first place. And that's where the real story begins. You were taught from childhood that success is the apex of human existence. From the first gold star on a homework assignment to the trophies, promotions, and status symbols of adulthood, society whispered, then shouted that achievement is the path to happiness. But this formula, so deeply ingrained, is the very trap that Carl Jung spent his life trying to expose. Jung understood that modern society had constructed an external scaffolding around the human psyche: roles, titles, achievements. But beneath that scaffolding is something older, something primordial, the self, the totality of who you are, including the unconscious parts you've ignored or repressed. The tragedy is that in the race for success, most people invest all their energy in building the scaffolding, mistaking it for the structure itself. They confuse who they are with what they do. This confusion has ancient philosophical roots. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote of the will to life, a blind, insatiable force that propels all beings forward. Human beings, he argued, are driven by endless striving, perpetually desiring new achievements, only to find that, upon acquiring them, the pleasure quickly fades. The cycle begins again, striving, achieving, emptying. Schopenhauer called this the pendulum of life, swinging between pain and boredom. Jung was deeply aware of this cycle, but he added a critical insight. Without inner integration, achievement becomes sterile. To Jung, this is not merely an emotional hiccup. It is a fundamental psychological misalignment. He described the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world, and contrasted it with the self, the vast, mysterious totality of who we are. Success, in the modern sense, is often a persona-driven pursuit. We craft an identity based on what will gain approval, power, and recognition, but we neglect the shadow, the disowned, unconscious parts of ourselves that hold our deepest fears, desires, and creative potential. Here lies the hidden problem. You've succeeded as your persona, but failed as yourself. You became the doctor, the CEO, the artist, the entrepreneur, the person everyone admires. But the neglected parts of you, the parts that crave authenticity, intimacy, spiritual depth, have been left in the dark. Jung warned that the longer we ignore these parts, the more they manifest as symptoms: depression, anxiety, a vague sense of futility, or, more hauntingly, as the profound emptiness that follows success. Consider also the influence of Friedrich Nietzsche, who foresaw the collapse of traditional meaning structures. God is dead, he famously declared, not as a celebration, but as a lament. Without transcendent meaning, humanity risks descending into nihilism. The modern obsession with success is, in many ways, an attempt to fill that void. But as Nietzsche warned, when human beings create their own values without grounding them in something deeper, they become vulnerable to what he called the last man, a creature of comfort and achievement, but devoid of real purpose. Carl Jung, similarly, observed that the spiritual and psychological starvation of modern individuals stems from this loss of depth. He wrote, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." Yet meaning, in Jung's framework, is not something you achieve externally. It emerges through the lifelong process of individuation, integrating the conscious and unconscious, the light and shadow, to become a whole, authentic being. But modern society does not encourage individuation. It rewards specialization, efficiency, and conformity. Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, warned of a future where humanity is so pacified by comfort and entertainment that it forgets the deeper questions of existence. That future, it seems, has arrived. We are saturated with images of success followers, wealth, beauty, prestige, but starved of real engagement with the unconscious depths of the psyche. This is the hidden problem. The modern ideal of success is a counterfeit of the soul as true longing. You are led to believe that fulfillment lies in status, wealth, or recognition. But these are only proxies for the deeper need, the need for wholeness, meaning, and self-actualization. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust and a profound psychologist, put it succinctly: man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life. When success is pursued without reference to meaning, it becomes an empty ritual. But how did this illusion become so pervasive? The roots lie in cultural conditioning. From an early age, you were taught to prioritize external validation over internal alignment. Grades mattered more than curiosity. Careers mattered more than calling. Appearances mattered more than authenticity. Over time, you internalized these values, constructing an identity designed to win approval but estranged from your inner world. You became a master of achievement, but a novice of self-understanding. Carl Jung saw this disconnection as the root of much modern suffering. He warned that those who do not undertake the journey inward will inevitably face a crisis, a moment when external success collapses under the weight of internal emptiness. Jung described this as the midlife crisis, but it can happen at any age, and it is not a crisis of circumstances, it is a crisis of the soul. So here you are, having climbed the mountain, only to find that the summit offers not clarity, but fog. What you're feeling is not failure. It is the call of the self, the unconscious demand that you awaken from the collective trance of success and begin the deeper, more dangerous journey, the journey inward. But before you can take that journey, you must confront the consequences of having lived so long in the service of a false ideal. You must see how this hidden problem has shaped not only your feelings, but your very perception of reality. And that is what we must explore next, the unseen consequences of success without self-awareness, the ways it distorts your emotions, your relationships, and even your sense of identity. You might not even recognize how deeply the pursuit of hollow success has shaped you. It is subtle, insidious, like a parasite that changes the behavior of its host without ever revealing its presence. You feel the symptoms: fatigue, restlessness, dissatisfaction, but the cause remains elusive. The first and perhaps most corrosive consequence is the gradual erosion of your emotional compass. When your life is oriented around success, defined by external markers, titles, income, recognition, you begin to measure your self-worth by those metrics alone. Slowly, you lose touch with intrinsic motivation, the joy of creation, the thrill of curiosity, the serenity of authenticity. Instead, you chase outcomes. You learn to ignore how things feel and focus only on how things appear. Neurologically, this shift is reflected in the hijacking of your brain's reward system. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter that propels goal-seeking behavior, becomes tethered exclusively to external achievements. Each success triggers a spike of pleasure, reinforcing the behavior. But as with any addictive cycle, the reward diminishes over time. You need more: a bigger promotion, a larger following, a more prestigious accolade. Yet no matter how much you achieve, the feeling of satisfaction is fleeting, ephemeral, like sand slipping through your fingers. Carl Jung foresaw this modern predicament long before the advent of social media and hyper-capitalist productivity culture. He warned that when the psyche becomes fixated on persona, the mask, you lose access to the deeper layers of the unconscious where true vitality resides. The result is a kind of psychological anemia. You go through the motions of life, but your inner world is starved of nourishment. This leads to the second major consequence: emotional disconnection, not just from yourself, but from others. When you live primarily through your persona, every interaction becomes a performance. You present the version of yourself that you believe will earn validation, admiration, or acceptance. But this performative mode of being creates a chasm between your outer life and your inner truth. How many conversations have you had where you said what was expected, smiled when you didn't feel like it, nodded in agreement while suppressing your real thoughts? Over time, this performance becomes automatic, unconscious. You wake up one day and realize that even in your closest relationships, you feel alone because no one truly knows you. Perhaps you don't even know yourself anymore. This is what Jung called the loss of soul. And it manifests not only in loneliness, but also in a kind of existential fatigue, the sense that life, despite its apparent successes, lacks depth, texture, and meaning. You may find yourself oscillating between moments of manic productivity and periods of numb detachment, unable to explain why neither state brings you peace. The third consequence is a distortion of identity itself. When success is the axis upon which your life turns, failure becomes not merely an event, but a personal annihilation. Any setback, criticism, or misstep feels catastrophic because it threatens the very foundations of your self-concept. You become fragile, defensive, terrified of vulnerability. Carl Jung understood that this fragility arises from over-identification with the persona. The more rigidly you cling to your public identity, the more you fear anything that might expose your hidden, shadow self. And yet, ironically, it is precisely this shadow, the repressed, unloved parts of you, that holds the key to your wholeness. But society does not prepare you for this confrontation. From childhood, you were conditioned to suppress parts of yourself that didn't align with the image of success, your fears, your doubts, your unconventional desires. As a result, these disowned aspects sink into the unconscious, where they fester, waiting for the moment when your carefully constructed persona collapses. That moment often comes after a major success. Why? Because success removes the distraction of striving. When you are climbing the mountain, you can postpone the inner reckoning by focusing on the next handhold. But when you reach the summit and realize there's nothing left to climb, the silence becomes deafening. The unexamined parts of your psyche, ignored in your pursuit of success, finally demand to be heard. This leads to the fourth consequence: existential anxiety. Without the next goal to chase, you are forced to confront the fundamental questions you've been avoiding. Who am I beyond my achievements? What do I truly desire? What is the purpose of my existence? Jean-Paul Sartre described this moment as nausea, a nausea, visceral recognition of the absurdity and arbitrariness of life when stripped of its social constructs. Without meaning imposed from the outside, you are left adrift, untethered, staring into the abyss of your own freedom. For many, this is an unbearable confrontation. They retreat into distraction, addiction, or another round of achievement, hoping to stave off the existential vertigo. But the consequences extend beyond the individual. At the societal level, the collective pursuit of hollow success breeds cultures of burnout, anxiety, and disconnection. We see it in skyrocketing rates of depression, in the glorification of hustle culture, in the commodification of every aspect of human life, from relationships to hobbies to personal branding. The very fabric of society becomes warped by a relentless imperative to appear successful, even as the inner lives of its members grow increasingly impoverished. Carl Jung warned that such collective neuroses arise when societies lose touch with their myths, their shared narratives of meaning. In the absence of authentic spiritual or psychological frameworks, societies default to materialistic definitions of success. But as Jung wrote, the greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally unsolvable. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. This is the crux of the matter. The emptiness you feel after success is not a problem to solve, but a symptom of something that must be transcended. And yet, most people remain trapped in this cycle, mistaking the symptom for the cause, seeking more of the very thing that makes them sick. Like addicts chasing a high that never lasts, they redouble their efforts, work longer hours, accumulate more, post more, smile more while their inner world withers. But what if there is another way? What if the very emptiness you feel is not a curse, but a call, a signal that you are ready to step beyond the narrow confines of persona-driven success into something far more authentic and transformative? Before that can happen, you must understand how to rebel against this unconscious conditioning, how to break free from the invisible chains that bind you to a hollow ideal. And that is what we will explore next: the rebellion, the radical. counterintuitive steps you must take to reclaim your wholeness and rewrite the very narrative of your life. You've spent your life climbing a ladder, only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. Now comes the most critical question. How do you break free from the seductive, yet hollow, architecture of success that has shaped your identity? Carl Jung would not advise you to simply renounce your achievements or abandon your responsibilities in a moment of reckless revolt. No, Jung's rebellion is far more radical, more subversive. It begins not in the external world, but within the psyche itself. To rebel is not to burn down your life, but to turn inward, to confront the unconscious forces you've long ignored, and to fundamentally alter the relationship between your inner world and your outer existence. The first step is this: stop identifying with your persona. You must see that the successful you, the doctor, the artist, the entrepreneur, the leader, is a mask, not the totality of your being. It is a role you learn to play to navigate the expectations of family, society, and culture. But you are not your role. You are not your LinkedIn profile, your resume, or your reputation. These are tools, not truths. This disidentification is terrifying because it threatens the very structure of your self-image. Without your persona, who are you? But this fear is the threshold you must cross. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming a whole person, requires the courage to confront and integrate the shadow. Those disowned parts of yourself you've banished to the unconscious in your quest to appear successful. The rebellion, then, is a journey into the dark. You must confront your envy, your rage, your vulnerability, your longing for love, your suppressed creativity, everything that didn't fit into the persona you constructed. This is not a comfortable process. It is, as Jung described, an initiation into the night sea journey, a descent into the underworld of the psyche. But only by making this descent can you reclaim the parts of yourself that were exiled in the name of success. Consider the story of Siddhartha, Gautama the Buddha, who left behind his royal privileges and worldly comforts, not in rejection of life, but in pursuit of a deeper, more authentic existence. His rebellion was not against success itself, but against the illusion that material success could answer the soul's longing for freedom. Likewise, Carl Jung himself endured a period of intense inner turmoil, famously known as his confrontation with the unconscious, when he broke away from the established doctrines of Sigmund Freud and plunged into his own psyche, encountering archetypes, dreams, and visions that would shape his life's work. These historical examples reveal a profound truth. The real rebellion is a spiritual and psychological revolution. But how do you initiate this revolution in your own life? You must begin by cultivating what Jung called active imagination. This is not fantasy or escapism, but a deliberate engagement with the unconscious through dreams, symbols, art, and reflection. Instead of dismissing your dreams as meaningless, start paying attention to them. They are the language of your unconscious, offering clues to the parts of yourself you've neglected. Likewise, engage with your emotions, especially the uncomfortable ones. When you feel the hollowness after success, don't numb it with more work, more distractions, or superficial pleasures. Sit with it, listen to it. Ask, what is this emptiness trying to tell me? Often, the answer will not be immediate. The unconscious speaks in images and intuitions, not in linear logic. But over time, a new direction will emerge, not dictated by society's definition of success, but by your own authentic desires and values. This is where the rebellion becomes counterintuitive. You must shift from a goal-oriented mindset to a meaning-oriented existence. Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of Auschwitz, realized that human beings can endure unimaginable suffering if they find meaning in it. Conversely, they can be destroyed by success if it is devoid of meaning. Frankl wrote, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." This is precisely what many do after achieving success. They pursue more wealth, more status, more novelty, But these are distractions, not answers. To break free, you must replace the question, "What do I want to achieve?" with "What is calling me to become?" This shift from doing to becoming is revolutionary. It transforms success from a superficial pursuit of external markers into a byproduct of living in alignment with your inner truth. But there is more. You must also confront your relationship with failure. In the persona-driven model of success, failure is a mortal threat. But in the individuated life, failure is essentially a teacher, a mirror reflecting the parts of yourself that require growth and integration. Carl Jung warned that those who avoid failure, who cling desperately to their personas, become brittle, shallow, and disconnected from life's deeper currents. But those who embrace their shadow, who risk vulnerability, become whole. So ask yourself, what parts of me have I neglected in my pursuit of success? What talents, passions, or dreams did I abandon because they didn't fit the image I wanted to project? Perhaps you loved painting but became a lawyer. Perhaps you yearned for solitude but pursued a life of constant networking. Perhaps you craved intimacy but hid behind professional detachment. Whatever it is, the rebellion requires that you reclaim these lost aspects, not necessarily to change your career, but to change your orientation to life. Finally, you must redefine success itself. The traditional model defines success as accumulation, more money, more influence, more recognition. But the individuated model defines success as integration, more wholeness, more authenticity, more alignment between who you are inside and how you live outside. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who your parents wanted you to be, not who society told you to be, but who you are in your deepest, most unguarded self." This is the rebellion, not against success per se, but against the false idea of success that has imprisoned your soul. It is a rebellion that liberates, that heals, that transforms. And yet, even this rebellion is not the final destination. It is the beginning of a deeper realization, one that Jung hinted at but never claimed to fully understand. The ultimate truth that emerges when you step beyond both success and failure, beyond persona and shadow, beyond striving and surrender. That is where we must go next to the ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization that will change how you see your life, your success, and yourself forever. And now, standing at the precipice, stripped of the illusions that once guided you, you face the final question, not what you should achieve, or even who you should become, but something more elemental, more ancient. What does it mean to live fully beyond the constructs of success and failure, beyond the masks of identity? Carl Jung suggested that this ultimate realization is not found in the peaks of worldly accomplishment, nor in the depths of psychological analysis, but in a subtle, often overlooked truth. You are already whole. The emptiness you felt after success was never proof of your inadequacy, nor a sign that you failed to achieve the right goals. It was the inevitable consequence of seeking outside what was always within. The more you chased completion through titles, recognition, or wealth, the more distant wholeness became, like a horizon that recedes as you approach. Here lies the paradox that Jung's entire body of work points toward. The self, the true, integrated you, is not something to be built. It is something to be uncovered. It was never missing. It was only obscured by layers of conditioning, by the demands of society, by the roles you adopted in your quest to be loved, respected, successful. The ultimate truth is disarmingly simple and terrifyingly profound. There is nothing to achieve. There is only something to realize. This realization is a kind of ego death, not a literal annihilation of the self, but the death of the false self, the persona, that believed happiness was conditional upon achievement. Jung described this as the transcendent function, a process by which the tension between opposing forces within the psych persona and shadow, conscious and unconscious, is resolved in a higher synthesis. In this synthesis, the fragmented parts of you reunite, and you experience not the elation of success, but the serenity of authenticity. Think of it as a shift from striving to being. It is no longer about becoming someone, but about being who you have always been beneath the noise. A human being who contains multitudes, contradictions, flaws, and infinite potential. This realization transforms your relationship to everything: success, failure, love, loss. You no longer view success as a validation of your worth or failure as a negation of it. Both are seen as experiences necessary, transient, instructive, but neither defines you. You are not what you do. You are not what you have achieved. You are not what others think of you. You are the one who observes, who feels, who dreams, who suffers, who loves. The self is this observing consciousness, this deeper center of being that was never dependent on accomplishments for its existence. Carl Jung often spoke of the symbol of the mandala, a circular image representing wholeness and the archetype of the self. In his own dreams and drawings, Jung saw mandalas emerge spontaneously during his most profound psychological transformations. For him, these symbols reflected the psychic equilibrium that arises when one integrates the disparate parts of the personality. Your journey, then, is not about climbing higher, but about moving inward, circling closer to the center, to the self. And what awaits you, there is not the applause of others, but the quiet, immeasurable joy of being aligned with your own nature. This is why the ultimate truth is so often resisted. It offers no trophies, no titles, no viral posts, no performance to win. It offers only liberation freedom from the compulsive need to prove your worth through external accomplishments. Yet, paradoxically, when you live from this center, when you are guided by the quiet voice of the self, rather than the loud demands of the persona, your actions become more impactful, more creative, more authentic. Success may still come, but it is no longer the goal. It is the byproduct of living truthfully. Jung warned that this process is not without its costs. To let go of the false self is to endure a kind of death. But he also knew that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The pain you feel in the emptiness after success is the contraction before rebirth, the dismantling of the old structure so that something new, something more real, can emerge. And what emerges is not a better persona, but a freer soul. You realize that the emptiness you feared was, in fact, the clearing a sacred space where the noise of societal expectations falls away, leaving room for your true nature to speak. Perhaps in this space, you return to the things you loved before you were taught what to love. The music you played not for performance, but for joy. The writing you did not for publication, but for exploration. The friendships that required no status updates, no networking, only presence. Or perhaps you discover entirely new passions, called forth not by ambition, but by curiosity, by love for the experience itself. This is the final, most powerful realization. Life is not a problem to be solved or a race to be won. It is an unfolding mystery to be lived, moment by moment, from the center of your being. In this space, you no longer fear the silence that follows success. You welcome it. You understand that the applause fades, the accolades gather dust, but the inner life, the life of the self, is inexhaustible, eternal in its capacity to grow, to wonder, to love. Jung's great gift to us is not a system of psychology, but a map for this inner journey, a reminder that the real work of life is not outward achievement, but inward integration. So now, as you stand at this threshold, you must decide, will you continue chasing the ghost of fulfillment through external success? Or will you turn inward and undertake the far more daring adventure, the adventure of becoming whole? The choice is yours. And perhaps, as you sit with this question, you'll realize something extraordinary. The very emptiness that once haunted you was, all along, the doorway to your most profound liberation. The applause may fade, the achievements may pass, But this realization, this return to yourself, is yours forever. Welcome home. If this resonated with you, if it made you question, reflect, or feel seen, consider subscribing. Your journey inward is just beginning, and together we'll keep exploring the depths of the psyche, meaning, and transformation. And if you found value here, a simple like helps this message reach others who might need it too.